That's who the blessed man is. What are his activities? Well, the first one says, who does not. So there are 3 negatives listed right away. These are activities from which the blessed man abstains, avoids, and even abhors. He has nothing to do with the counsel of the wicked, the path of the sinner, or the seat of the scorner. Now, there's a pressure in our culture to only speak using positives. That's something us Americans, Australians have in common. Our words are to always be words of affirmation. We're to speak things that build up negatives, we are told, only tear down. Let me give you 2 examples. Mayim Bialik is a PhD in neuroscience from UCLA, but she's mostly known as an actress that is on the Big Bang Theory. I don't know if that got over here from America. If it is, I'm sorry. I tried to stop it. In her spare time, she writes for several popular websites on the subject of gentle parenting. What is gentle parenting? Well, good question. Bialik gives a list of gentle parenting essentials in one of her most read articles. Here's 2 that are very pertinent. Not for instead of no. The word no is not very helpful, and using it will come back to haunt you. We've used the word no very rarely, instead coming up with a myriad of ways to indicate no and stop undesirable behaviors. We never baby-proofed our home, except for power outlet covers. We don't have buttons on our power outlets. In a stern tone, which we say for only such occasions, and strong body language. Did the trick in averting exploration of dangerous things. To this day, neither of my boys have ever said, shouted, or screamed no at us. Then she says, give a yes for every no, sometimes 2. There are times when we need to and ought to say no to a child, such as when a slice of brightly colored, fantastic-looking birthday cake is not vegan. Small people love to hear yes, even if it's after a no. Even if it's really disappointing, no. Even if it's a really disappointing no, I found that providing a yes to something else can work wonders. So for the non-vegan cake, if the answer is no, the yes is to our own treat waiting for us at home after the party. Poor kid. Notice the goal is to get around the use of the negatives as much as possible. Bialik admits that in some cases you have to say no, but she frames it as if it should be a rarity. Now, of course, Bialik is a vegan, and that may lead you to believe that she's part of a fringe culture, at least back in the States. There's not very many of those. This example then would have very little application for the church, right? Well, let me give you something a little closer to home. There's a Christian radio station back in the States called K-Love. Do you guys have K-Love here? No, okay. It's huge. It's gigantic. And it has over 12 million listeners each week in cities including New York City, Chicago, Denver. These are big global cities. It's also the 6th most online streamed station in the world. At least it was a couple years ago. Their slogan is positive, encouraging K-Love. Anyone that has worked in a corporate environment knows that a lot of thinking goes into coming up with a company's slogan. It's not something you just throw together willy-nilly. You do market research to determine your key demographic. You come up with several options, and then you run them by test groups to see which one elicits the desired reaction. It's generally very calculated. I think K-Love, from a marketing perspective, got it right, from a marketing perspective. In 2013, K-Love won the Billy Graham Award for Excellence in Christian Communications and were voted Station of the Year. They know their audience. They know that most Christians, evangelicals in particular, are looking for positive and affirming content. Please don't misunderstand me. I'm not trying to tell you that it's wrong to listen to K-Love or something like that. I don't. I can't do it. But that's not my point. My point is simply that Christians are more and more buying into the lie that our religion is all about positivity, right? However, we know that's not true. Scripture commends the use of negatives. You heard of the 10 Commandments, right? People always say, the Bible's not a bunch of yeses and nos. Well, yeah, it is. Yeah, that's not all it is. But yeah, it absolutely is. The New Testament is full of negatives. Jesus says, go and sin no more. Paul says, do not be conformed to the ways of the world. It's a very simple application. We need to recapture the negatives of Scripture without losing grasp on the positive, right? We need to exhort and instruct. We need to tell people to flee and pursue. We need to let them know to do not and do. We need all of that. Only positives coddles Christians into fragility. Like people that grow up in a church that only tells them positives, the moment that someone tells them the truth about themselves, tells them a no, gives them a criticism, they fall apart. That's exactly what's going to happen to that miserable child raised by that woman. Not going to be ready for the real world. But only negatives burden Christians into fragility. You've been into churches where their entire identity is in what they're not. That's not good either, right? Scripture is to turn from one thing. So, for example, thou shalt not murder, when it comes to killing people, is pretty easy to obey. So far, I haven't murdered anyone. I found it to be quite easy, right? But what is it really about? Well, we know that what it's about is preserving life. That's the positive command. It uses the negative to get your attention, but what's commending is the protection of life, propagating of life. And so that's what we have to show both sides of the law. Metal is shaped and strengthened both by the fire and the water. Strength comes when we turn from and then turn to.